Class 9, let's continue the chapter, and the topic is Right to Education. So, Right to Education Act that came into force on 1st of April 2010. This was a historic day for the people of India, since from this day the right to education was given the same legal force as the right to life under the Constitution of India. So it's clearly written that Right to Education Act, which was adopted on 1st of April 2010, has given legal status, and the key features of the Right to Education Act are like all children between 6 to 14 years age group, they will get free and compulsory education, and there will be 25% of reservation for poor children in even in private schools and in minority schools, right? And if the teachers are untrained, then they must get that professional degree within 5 years, right? And the expenses, whatever the expense will be there per child, then that will be shared between central as well as the state government, right? Okay, now next is prohibition. Next is right against exploitation. In this right against exploitation, there are the two main declarations against exploitation. Exploitation means misuse. For one is the prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor, and second one is prohibition of employment of children in factories, etc. So, in prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor, Constitution prohibits traffic in human beings and beggar and other similar forms of forced labor. Traffic in human beings means dealing in man and women like goods, such as selling, letting, or otherwise disposing of them. It would include traffic in women and girls for immoral purposes. So, beggar or forced labor means making a person work against his will and then not to pay him his wages. So, prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor. In this, if someone is forced to do something or forced to do work without his or her will, and without the payment or without paying him or her wages, then that comes in this exploitation, right? So Constitution prohibits this type of forced labor, right? And traffic in human beings. Trafficking means selling human beings, right? Especially children and women, right? And children and women, they dealing children and women like goods, such as selling and otherwise disposing of them. So it would include traffic in women and girls for immoral purposes, right? So Indian Constitution prohibits this type of trafficking in trafficking and beggar and other similar forms of forced labor. We have prohibition of employment of children in factories, etc. So no child below the age of 14. So till 14 years we considered that person as a child, right? So no child below the age of 14 years shall be employed to work in any factory or mine. Mine means mining, right? Mining work. So, nor shall such a child be engaged in any hazardous employment. So hazardous employment means maybe that if maybe that child is working in cigarette factory or any other toxic any other factories where toxic materials or chemicals are manufactured, right? So Indian constitution prohibits this type of employment of children in factories, and children means the child below the age of 14 years. Next, we have right to freedom of religion. So, the Indian Constitution secures to all citizens liberty of belief, faith, and worship. The objective is achieved by the following provisions of the Constitution. Number one, we have freedom of conscience and free profession and propagation of religion. So, this means Indian Constitution guarantees to every person freedom of conscience and the right to profess, practice, and propagate their religion. Right? For example, the wearing of turban and carrying of kirpan, that sword, is included in the profession of the Sikh religion. Right? Okay. Now, next we have freedom to manage religious affairs. So, Indian Constitution guarantees the right to establish and maintain institutions for religious and charitable purposes, right? So, every religious sect has the right to own movable and immovable property, right? Freedom as to payment of taxes for promotion of any particular religion. That means no taxes will be taken, will shall be levied. That means no taxes will be taken, the income from which is meant for the maintenance of of any particular religion. Why? Because it is against the ideals of the secular state, right? And to pay out of public funds any money for the promotion of any particular religion. So there is no taxes shall be levied. No religious instruction in institutions maintained out of state funds. So, no religious instruction shall be provided to any educational institution wholly maintained by state funds. So, in this, we should have secular type of education system, right? Where in which any person from any religious background can come and can study without any differences, right? And our Indian Constitution guarantees that right to all its citizen, right? There is complete freedom of religion in India except certain restrictions are there, and no person no religious instruction can be imparted in any educational institution wholly maintained out of state funds, or no person attending any educational institution recognized by the state or receiving aid out of state fund can be compelled to take part in any religious instruction without his or her consent, right? So, and no religious instruction shall be provided in any educational institutions wholly or maintained out of the state funds, right? So, as we can say that Indian institution or the constitution thus aims to establish a secular state. It allows equal freedom of faith and worship to all. Cultural and educational rights. So, in this, the Constitution of India ensures equal to all the citizens of India liberty pertaining to conserving their culture. This provision also states that the citizen have the right to preserve their language, heritage, and the cultural backgrounds, right? And in the second right under the article of 29 also says that no minority groups will be denied admission in any educational institutions, right? And in this case, no minority or majority can be denied admission in any state or any private institution on the basis of this cultural and educational rights. Next, we have right to constitutional remedies. A mere declaration of the fundamental rights is useless unless there are the means to make them effective. Article 32 guarantees the right to move to the Supreme Court for the enforcement of fundamental rights. High courts also may issue writs or orders for the enforcement of any of the rights. The right is the writ is a legal document ordering the performance of some action. Writs act as a check on arbitrary actions of the state. So, by this, we'll come to know what is exactly the writ is. Number one, the writ of habeas corpus. Writ of habeas corpus is a Latin term which means you may have the body. It provides a remedy for a person wrongfully detained or restrained. The Supreme Court and the High Courts may command to bring the prisoner into court and tell the time and cause of arrest. If the cause is insufficient, he is at once unconditionally released. So, writs of habeas corpus means this writ is in the nature of an order calling upon the person who has detained another to produce the letter before the court in order to let the court know on what ground he has been confined and to set him free if there is no legal justification for the confinement. If the cause is insufficient, then that person who has been wrongfully detained or who has been taken into custody unlawfully, then that person, and that cause is insufficient, then that person is at once unconditionally released, right? Now next is mandemus. It's a Latin term, Latin word mandemus, that means we command. So this is the command. The purpose of this writ is to compel an inferior court. So inferior court means the lower courts. So it's a superior court will command an inferior court or tribunal or a public official to carry out a public duty, right? To perform their duty. And this power has to be exercised only for the enforcement of fundamental rights. Nexus Prohibition. A writ of prohibition is issued to prevent an inferior court from exercising powers with which it is not legally vested. It directs the inferior courts to keep within the limits of their authority. So, writ of prohibition is a writ directing a subordinate court to stop doing something the law prohibits, right? So this writ is often issued by a superior court, higher court, to the lower court, directing it not to proceed with a case which does not fall under its or under their jurisdiction. Clear? Okay. Certiorari. So the term certiorari means to be informed of what is going on. By this writ, the lower court is asked to hand over the record of a particular case to the higher court. So a writ of certiorari, that means it's an order, or the higher court orders the lower court to deliver its record in a case so that the higher court may review it, right? Or it is a writ of certiorari orders the lower court to forward all the documents in a case it has heard to the higher court for review. Now next we have a writ of quo warranto. So this writ is directed against a person who has wrongfully usurped an office. The writ calls upon the person to show under what authority he holds the office. Right? So under this, if a person has wrongfully or illegally taken someone's office, and in that case the court can issue a writ that is known as quo warranto. So that according to that writ, the writ calls upon that person to show under what authority he is holding the office, and if the court decides that the person concerned is holding the office illegally, then it declared the office to be vacant. This much for today, children. We'll continue with the same chapter in the next video. Till then, bye bye.